This week I am joined by one of my friends. Hello, Allyson. How are you feeling?
Hey, a little nervous because I've never done one of these things or been on camera, but good.
It's so funny. Every single time I bring one of my friends who's not at all familiar with this just category of things is always like, I'm nervous. Even some of my friends who are, they're like, I'm nervous. It's the first thing they say.
It's just weird because, I'm not used to being in front of the camera. I'm always with our artist. I work in the music business. I work for Curb Records. And I'm usually the one helping promote the artist. So it's definitely really, I guess, eye-opening to go, oh, this is what they're having to do. They're probably thinking about, are my teeth, like, do I have lipstick on my teeth? Or, like, is there a nose in my hair? Or, like, a nose in my hair, a hair in my nose?
You were there.
See?
That's okay.
But yeah, it's definitely different. But hopefully it'll be beneficial.
It will. And the reason I wanted to bring you on, you and I have not only been good friends for a long time, but you and I are both major advocates of mental health. And you have a family member that has been very involved in your life that also has struggled, it has impacted you in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I also want to speak to that because November is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Most people are familiar with Movember. I don't know even how Movember, where everybody wears the mustaches or they don't shave. There's a few different campaigns that have happened, but we are around the time of November. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about this kind of stuff in particular. So give us a little background about you. I know things about you. The people do not.
What do the people want to know?
So some background just about you and why mental health is so important to you would be a good start.
Well, I think, I work, like I mentioned, in the music industry, and I think our industry, first and foremost, deals with mental health a lot because, as mentioned, just coming in here with you, a lot of people are in front of the camera, they're in the limelight, and I don't think it's necessarily pretty or comfortable to talk about mental health. And I've always been an advocate for mental health, just growing up with a family member struggling with it. I myself struggle with anxiety and, there wasn't a lot of information out there growing up about it. And there was a lot of stigma built around it. So I guess I'm in the generation that just believes be who you are, whatever authenticity that is, whether you suffer from, I don't know, if let's say you have OCD or anxiety like myself or bipolar or, what are some other things that wouldn't even have to do with mental health?
Oh, you could have anger management problems.
Okay.
You could have trust issues.
See, there we go. I think it's about, just again, being authentic, but myself, hi, I forgot to mention again, I'm Allyson. I love mental health awareness, but I don't know. I guess from an early age is when I really started. It didn't matter like the industry I was in or growing up, or I was a cheerleader growing up. I was in musical theater. I was in choir. And I don't know. I felt like I noticed people's emotions or like if they were going through something, even during then. And I always felt, it sounds cheesy, but I always wanted everybody to feel comfortable just being themselves.
So you've not only had personal experience of why this is so important to you to bring awareness to, but you and I have often talked about there is a person in your life, like a immediate family member who you've dealt with this since you were a kid. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you? Like, break that down a little bit for me as a kid growing up with that type of environment.
Well, one, just to set the stage for everybody, I come from a divorced family. My mom and dad separated when I got divorced at 5. So I was used to going to both sides of the families, whether it was mom's, dad's, dad's side of the family, mom's side of the family, whatever. So I've always had what do they call that household? Like a split household? There's like a terminology or a term for it I'm not thinking of.
I'm thinking of blended, but that's the opposite.
Maybe it's blended. Okay, well, I don't know.
I think that's when you're divorced and then get remarried, and then there's multiple kids from different marriages.
I
It's
mean,
blended.
my dad did get married a couple of times, so I did have multiple step brothers and sisters, which was fun.
So you had some blended families happening.
It is, you know, so I got to learn all about a lot of different types of people growing up. But growing up at a younger age, I don't think I knew really what was going on. The awareness wasn't there, I guess. I just think I grew up thinking everything was, this is how people are in my family or this specific person. I'm like, oh, okay. It was a male in my family. And I just assumed that this is how this person operated in life. And I didn't know, I guess I didn't notice the fluctuations in the struggles that he had until probably I was in high school. When I say 14-ish, 15 years old, I specifically remember a time in ninth grade where he was in the hospital and, you know, my family was like, you definitely don't want to see him like this. Like, it's not good. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Not good.
Oh gosh. And yeah, as a teenager, you're sitting there like, okay, this person that I'm close to is in the hospital and I'm not supposed to see him this way.
Right. And you're like, well, why? It's like, oh, okay, so they're sick, like their appendix. And it's like, oh, it's different. And it's like, okay, well, what's different mean, you know?
And it wasn't ever talked about within your family of like, hey, this is what this is, and try to explain to you what was happening?
I think I was probably made aware of it. I mean, he was bipolar, is bipolar. And I'm trying to remember the very first time I was even told the term. Probably 9th or 10th grade is honestly the first recollection I have of that, right? And I didn't know what bipolar meant. I didn't even know probably what anxiety meant. I knew what stress was. I'm like, oh, I'm stressed. I've got cheerleading practice and I've got homework and then I've got this part-time job and, you know, I got to look decent when I go to school and I got to wake up at 5 a.m. because we had to get the bus at 7 or 6:30 in high school. But I don't think I knew the depth of what it meant. And I really didn't understand it until probably after I was in college for a year or two and then moved down to Tennessee. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. And this person was like, you know, you're going to get away from your community. You're not going to have the support system and the group and yada, yada. Because, again, I personally struggle with anxiety. Didn't really know what that was until high school. But, you know, this person that struggled with bipolar, he was always saying, it's not good, don't do this, don't move, don't whatever. And it was during that episode of when I moved down to Tennessee and was in college that I really started to Google, okay, what is bipolar? You know, what are these episodes that people talk of? What is mania? What is depression? What is hypomania? Because a lot of people don't know, right? And unless you experience something, whether it's cancer or Down syndrome, anything, right? Just anything. You really don't know unless you experience it.
So from your perspective, break down what you watched bipolar mean, the depression, the mania, and the hypermania.
So, you know, it's funny. Again, I didn't know what it meant then, but I saw...
This is kind of you speaking as a looking back now.
Yeah.
When you realize it.
Yeah.
Would be my thing is like most of this is probably things that you've realized, whether it be through your own growth, your own journey, that you look back and say, oh, that's what that was. Oh, this is what that looks like.
Well, my cousins and I remember with this family member, we would go outside and we would play and they would come out and be like, oh, let's go play baseball. Let's rake the leaves in the yard. Like whatever it was, there was so much energy. And I remember at the time noticing that there were multiple cars in the driveway. And I'm like, oh, this family member. I'm like, he's rich, you know? And I'm like, he's full of life and this and that. But then other times we would come over to the house and he would be sleeping till 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And I'm like, okay. And, you know, as a kid, as a family, you know, you're 7, 8, 10, whatever, 11 years old. You're spending the night at your family member's house, your cousins are there, and you're kind of there by yourself. in the mornings. You wake up. I mean, as a kid, what time do we wake up at? Like 7 a.m., right?
Yeah. Ungodly hours of the morning.
Why we did that, I mean, I don't understand. I wish we did that as adults right now. It would make it a lot nicer.
Yeah.
But I remember waking up and going, okay, well, I guess I got to fix myself breakfast. And then, okay, well, now it's 8 o'clock. I fixed Eggo mini waffles and Philadelphia cream cheese. Both terrible things for you now. Sorry. I'm sure there's a healthy swap now. But I would sit and go, okay, now what? Then I would maybe sit and watch TV for 2 hours. Okay, now it's 10 o'clock, kind of bored. Go on the computer at the time and like, I don't know, get on AOL if the dial-up modem connected fast enough, and play some game or AIM chat with somebody. But I remember it got to the point where it was a little boring, but I remember him waking up and being really groggy and just very somber, very mellow all the time, almost like it took a minute for him to wake up and kind of know what was going on. And what I later learned was that was actually the medication and, him kind of being in a depression swing, because what happens with bipolar is it starts out with either a hypomanic or manic episode, right? And so it's this really high. I describe it like going uphill on a roller coaster. You go, right? You're strapped in, you're ready, and everything's really exciting. And you get to the tippy top, and that's like the peak of the manic episode. And then bam, the bottom falls out, just like 0 to 60. And sometimes people have it where it rapid cycles, where it's really fast. For instance, I know I've read stories of women in their 20s when they noticed it. I believe it's bipolar. I think it's bipolar type 1. There's like 4 to 6 now in the DSMV, but where they can cycle daily, 12 hours at a time. Now, some people, it's a really quick high, and then it's a really long low. So it's a really quick mania where it's basically hypersexuality. They're spending a ton of money. They think they're on top of the world. For instance, this family member was telling me, oh, like, I want you to go buy a Porsche and like, sell your Honda Civic and pick out a color. Like, I got you. Or, tell your fiance then at the time, like, I'll buy your ring. And as a kid, looking back, I thought I had a rich family member, right? I thought I had a really successful family member and whatever. But in adulthood, then I go, oh, this isn't a reality. Like, this isn't a realistic way of thinking, right? Mm-hmm. But that to be said, they're at this pinnacle high, thinking that they're on top of the world. And then when the crash comes, it's the stuff that people wouldn't want to talk about. It's the suicide attempts, or it's the thoughts of suicide because they feel worthless. And they can't pull themselves out of it because it's just the way their brain chemistry is.
Now, I want to talk to you you're mentioning all of this, and I'm thinking about you as a kid. And we are used to the older people in our lives helping us regulate our emotions. They're the ones who teach us how to do that. So now as an adult, and I imagine there were things that you had to figure out and learn and work through. What were some of those for you that you didn't have this person helping you understand how to regulate your own emotions and go through life experiences in a way that might have been more normal, I suppose, is a way to put that?
It was tough. I don't know if this is being a product of divorced parents and seeing both sides of the family and whatnot, but I was always really busy as a kid. I mean, I did every single extracurricular activity I could. And thank you, Mom and Dad for funding me to go through those, because I think it made me who I am today. But what I noticed looking back now is that I was so busy that I don't think I had time to become aware of those emotions or even learn how to regulate. I just was so busy that I kept going. I didn't stop. And I do remember there being times where I was so overwhelmed and stressed out and so busy that I would just, I would have a meltdown and I would cry and I would, I don't even know. Like sometimes I think I would binge watch TV. But I was probably just overwhelmed with all these emotions going through my head and not understanding some of the differences seeing the other family members go through. I give a lot of credit to my mother because she was the stable person in my life. I was with my mom, mostly throughout the week as I went to school. I would come home and go to practice. But what I realized later on in life is that it's a blessing and a curse because it definitely struggled with, I guess, consistency. And I'm really good at my job and in life at putting out fires because I'm so used to chaos in our family from this disease and my own anxiety. Like I deal with it myself, not bipolar, the ups and downs, but the anxiety and the overwhelm to the point where, again, I'm great at putting out fires. If there's a problem, I'm like, bam, 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 because I'm so used to walking on eggshells in those episodes and in those moments that I know how to react fast. But where I don't know how to react is everyday life when things are almost normal. It's calm, but I think I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And
like
that's
you kind of almost are used to and comfortable in the chaos versus the calm.
100%. It actually feels awkward for calm moments for me.
As an adult, have you learned and found your ways to deal with that?
As somebody who always loves dance, and I was a cheerleader growing up and musical theater, I mean, you got to think those are high emotions, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're always on, or
lots of adrenaline.
Yes. Okay. Great word. A lot of adrenaline. And yoga was a really hard thing for me. It was slow and it was boring, and I had to breathe really deep. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. This is so boring. But what I realized is, for my anxiety, yoga and calm really help deregulate that anxiety. And it also helps me stay in the moment more. But I give a lot of props to my husband because living with him throughout the past decade, he was always a consistent, calm, very even-keeled man in my life. And so, because I came from divorced parents and I really didn't get to see my dad all the time, I really learned what men were like from mostly this one family member. And it was a challenge in my relationships.
That's what I was going to ask you about, was how did this impact you as you started dating and you knew this as a model?
Well, I was very much a 6-week queen, or max 6 months girl. Queen. Look, I would find something I either didn't like or I was bored. And when I get bored, I move on.
So what made it different moving into this relationship? Do you feel like you worked on a lot of things up until him?
Yes and no. I worked on a lot, but I think we're always a work in progress, right? I mean, I'm still working on myself today.
Oh yeah. I don't think you ever. I think we will die imperfect.
100%. 100%. I mean, trust me, I say it all the time. A perfection is a flaw in itself.
It is.
It truly is.
And that's coming from 2 perfectionists.
Yeah. I didn't know I was an A-type personality until like 5 of my friends that were close to me. They're like, you're kind of a high achiever. And I was like, but I'm not perfect. I'm not consistent. I'm not this. I'm not that. I just have high expectations.
High expectations, yes, but they do coincide often with a perfectionist.
Yeah, well, okay, whatever. Hi, I'm guilty.
Oh, so am I. We're a mirror image of each other sometimes.
This is true. Our dogs do kind of look alike.
We have a lot of commonalities.
But going back to the relationships, with my now husband, I would say we made this joke early on in our relationship, and I'm like, hey, I'm a runner. I run away from relationships because I get bored and this and that, or I find something wrong. He's like, well, I'm going to take your running shoes away. I was like, does this man know that I'm an independent woman? Like, I am not moving in with a man before marriage. I am not, absolutely not. I will buy my own groceries. I will make my own money. And lo and behold, like I don't know, 4 months, 3 months after we met, I'm moving across the country and I'm going out to live with him.
He really did take away your running shoes, and may we all find a man who takes away the running shoes.
Hey, it was a lot of work. Don't think it was easy.
I don't think it was easy. I know the story. I know the background.
Look, and we went through couples therapy ourselves, and I am going to say this to everybody that's listening. I am a huge advocate of couples therapy and personal therapy. Like, I know there's this stigma about going to therapy, but everybody needs therapy. Everybody.
Yeah, you could be the most healed person in the world and you still need therapy.
I mean, sometimes it's just nice to talk to somebody that has literally no relation to you, they don't actually have like skin in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, they're not invested. They're invested in you personally, but they're not invested in the outcome of what you're invested into.
Right.
Yeah.
So, shout out to BetterHelp because we use them, or I use them for individual therapy, and then we did their couples care therapy, which was, I can see the heart. It's like a light blue heart. I forget the name of it. It'll come back to me. But it's great because as somebody who travels all the time in my business, I don't always have time to like come home after a flight and necessarily go to an in-room therapy session. So again, highly recommend that if you don't have a ton of time. They do work with income, like a sliding scale, because God knows I was poor multiple years ago and paying for student loans. So,
well, and I do want to, based on therapy too, you made me think of something kind of in relation to this family member. So now as you've gotten older, right, we kind of addressed the young parts of what happened. Mm-hmm. But now as you've gotten older, I imagine tables have reversed a little bit where, you know, you are taking care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How is that experience for you, given that you kind of had to take care of yourself in a lot of situations?
You know, there's moments where I'm really proud of myself for how I've handled things, given the situation that I've been in, and being the only family member that really wants to advocate for this person and realize, hey, any of us could have been born with this. That part's a blessing and a curse of myself, because while I don't need to take it on, I do because I care. And I want everybody in this world. I don't care if it's you sitting here with me or an artist I'm going to work with or a radio client or, the three-legged dog walking down the street. I care so much that I want people to know that they have purpose, I guess. And look, I want to know that I have purpose, right?
Yeah, it's a human nature to want that.
Yeah, and so I think it's the caring part of me that has put me in those roles, but it's been really tough. Like, there's been times I've wanted to give up. And I don't mean give up in the sense of my life, but give up and not help, because sometimes, just as we get frustrated in a relationship, right, or a job or anything, I get frustrated in not knowing what to do. And it's because some of the mental health regulations, state to state and federally, are not set up to fully help people in those moments. Did you know in any state, if somebody actually needs to be hospitalized in a psychiatric unit, they have to, one, say they're a threat to themselves, meaning they're going to kill themselves, okay? Or they're going to kill somebody else. So it's suicide or homicide. A lot of people, and men specifically, if they're going to commit suicide, you're not going to know about it.
Yeah, though they've been taught not to talk about their feelings. They've been taught that sharing these emotions and these things, it makes them weak.
Right.
So no, they're not going to tell anybody.
Right.
You're going to have to pick it up.
Right. I mean, it's okay for emotion, or for a woman to be emotional, right? And that kind of goes along with mental health. But I mean, look, we're called crazy. We're called hot messes. Like, there's all these things I could go into for that. But it's still, whether it's happy emotion or sad emotion or crazy PMS emotion, it's accepted that women have these emotions. It's not accepted that men have them. Mm-hmm. You expect a man to be either even keeled, a little bit cocky and confident, or maybe they have anger, right? There's not the same level of it's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel despair or to feel like you're worthless, or I shouldn't say it's not okay. It's just those are real feelings.
Yeah, you're allowed to feel those things while also feeling the other feelings. They're not mutually exclusive.
Correct.
And to your point, I didn't know that. I didn't know about that law. I do hope that's something that changes, because I can guarantee the many people I've talked to about mental health, the people who suffer from it, are never going to say one of those two things. Mm-mm. One, because that feels like a drastic leap from what you're feeling most of the time.
Correct.
Unless it has really gotten to a really, really, really bad point. Most of the time, you are just, you just don't want to be here in a way.
Right.
Without the extra levels of that. So to admit that makes it more shameful. It makes it harder on them. And then it makes people not get help.
And shame. Shame is literally the word that so many people are afraid of. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's really important to note, while there's cognitive behavioral therapy, right? There's a difference between psychologists and psychiatrists. A psychiatrist typically prescribes medicine based on X, Y, or Z symptoms, and the psychologist is going to work through the different ways to work through the emotion or to work through the moments and to get to the other side of it, right? It's about going through instead of just going around. Like the medication helps you get to a point where you can go through.
Yeah.
And I think both of those things are okay. They're not mutually exclusive, but I will say if you are taking medication, they should be mutually exclusive, because we shouldn't be, it's okay to take medicine, but I do believe that we've also seen in the past decade an overuse of prescription medicine for mental health, when maybe it's social media. Maybe it's a generation change, but I think we've seen a lot of over-medicated people in society, but not enough medicated through therapy. And I'm not, again, saying one is better than the other, or you can't do both, or yada, yada. But I think there's a lot that we have to work through as people.
Yeah, I think believing that it's like a Band-Aid, right? If you think, oh, I just need this to feel better, and you're probably right. It will make you feel better. But you need more than that. You want to, I'm not at the point in my life where I don't want to go into a doctor and say, give me a Band-Aid for this wound. I'm saying, fix the wound.
Right. Let's get to the root cause. Like, what is going on? Okay. If you are out of a job, right, and you're feeling like, I don't have a purpose because you're not getting up and going to work every day, what's your goal? The root cause is, I don't have a job. I need to go get another job, right? Or invent a job. A lot of people go, I feel sad. I feel this way. And some people, that's where medication does come into play. But sometimes there's other things at that root cause. For instance, for a husband, if a husband is the provider of the household. I am fully here for dual income households, because I think it's really hard to survive on a single income household these days in 2024. But if a husband's a sole provider, they're bringing in all the income, the wife or the other partner are, let's say there are kids or fur babies, for us that have fur babies to take care of. Sometimes I'd imagine that husband feels all the weight. Like if he loses his job, he isn't good enough, or he, isn't manly enough because he couldn't suck it up and deal with whatever the pressures were at work, or dealing with the pressures of his partner at home being like, oh my gosh, like spend time with me, do this, do that. Like it becomes this cyclical cycle of overwhelm for everybody, male or female, but a man is not going to talk about it necessarily as much. They feel like they have to shove this thing, this emotion, this feeling of overwhelm down inside them to the point where it takes them to a point where none of us want to see anyone go.
Mm-hmm. And, you're saying this, and it brings me to the reason I brought you on was to provide this awareness of growing up with a family member that had a really intense mental health disorder. If this family member, because he was a male, was told and allowed to express his emotions in and went to therapy and took care of things, what would have been that change like in your household?
I think it would have been different in the family, so there wasn't the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment because, you know, the baby boomer generation, and help me here, what's the generation that would have been the baby boomers' parents?
Oh, I don't know who I only know the boomers.
The Great Depression? I don't know. But it was, again, it was such a stigma back then. Like even our family members, like, hate to call them out on it, but they're like, oh, you know, you just need to suck it up and get over it. Or, oh, you know, this person's done X, Y, or Z over and over again. Well, it's like, yeah, guys, it's not you don't just cure anxiety. You don't just cure bipolar. You can manage it. You know, you can manage schizophrenia. You can manage bipolar, manage all these things, but you don't get over it. It is a lifelong disorder. And I think if therapy was better advocated, I guess, back then and for the baby boomer generation, then I think we'd be in a different place today. I think the kids of the baby boomer generation would be different. I think we might all be stronger. Not to say that social media isn't its own devil in itself, because it's, again, a blessing and a curse. You can get on social media and you can find different things to motivate you and say, oh my gosh, I hope you have a great day. And then you have other people that are like, it's okay to be sad and it's okay not to be okay. And like things that help you cheer you up. But then you have these people that are trolls constantly like being negative on your accounts. And for you even, like, I can't imagine, I'm reading some of your own posts, the hate that you've like dealt with, right? But maybe our generation would look at therapy as something as easy as going to a dentist appointment or working out, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just a part of the schedule. It's not something that is this dooming, dark little cloud that follows you around.
Right. Like if you portray therapy like maybe going to the gym. I'm not saying I am like, oh, yay, I can't wait to go to the gym, because I struggle a lot until I get into a routine. But if you have that endorphin high, like you do after leaving the gym, where you go, I'm never going to be mad that I actually, like, you're never mad that you actually worked out, right? We're always happy.
No.
You're like, yeah, I feel great. Oh, I look hot. Oh, I feel so good. My body feels healthy, right? Could you imagine walking out of therapy like that? Like you get that same endorphin.
Yeah, it's true. And it doesn't start right away, though. I can
No.
to that.
No. There's moments.
It takes a few sessions before I'm finally like, okay, we're on the other side of that, because those last ones were pretty heavy.
Hey, you don't walk out of the gym the first time you start, though, either, lifting weights and like, oh, yay, I can't wait to go back. No, you don't want to go back.
No, this is so true. And it's a muscle that you have to work. Your brain and your understanding of your body and your experiences is a muscle that you have to understand.
And what's interesting, I think you had a neurologist or a neuroscientist. Okay, on the podcast a couple months ago. And what was really interesting, I've done a lot of, so I'm kind of a nerd. I like, once I dive into something, I really dive into it. So if anybody ever needs any resources about mental health, DM me, hit Morgan up. Like, I will send whatever I've got. I literally have PDFs saved and links and numbers. Like, I just want people to know that there's tons of help out there now, as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, heck, even 10 years ago. But she talked about rewiring your brain, right?
Yeah.
And I do believe that is a legitimate thing, because you see it in science, right? You see the neural pathways start regenerating and connecting new ways, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. And I do believe, I think that we're going to see more, I don't even know what the word is, brain training. Is it brain rewiring? Brain training?
Brain rewiring your brain. There's probably different levels.
I think we should patent brain train. Okay. I don't know if anybody's done that. Brain train. Brain train. Hey, it could be like a kid's show. Anyway.
It does feel like that. Out of the box.
Ooh.
Did you ever watch that?
No, I was a Blue's Clues girl.
I watched Blue's Clues also, but okay. Out of the Box was my jam.
Is it like a Jack in the Box?
No, ma'am. Listen, this is a fake. We're totally going off the rails. This was a fake, like they had all these boxes in the front yard and then they'd walk into the boxes and boom, there's this huge playhouse.
How are you not terrified of that?
No, I loved it. I wanted my own playhouse like that. And I would put boxes down. I'm like, my boxes aren't turning into out of the box.
Okay, I'm sorry. That it kind of reminds me of like walking past a porta potty in the park and somebody just popping out like, surprise! I think it would hit them. Like, scare me.
Listen,
Gosh.
out of the box was my solace. It was a safe place. Anyways.
Okay, well, I'll have to go revisit this just for you.
Yes.
But I do wonder if rewiring your brain is going to become a new form of therapy that's more vastly known, because I do believe it's a muscle, and I do believe that there's some real evidence and science behind the fact that it does work. And if people, that struggle from bipolar or schizophrenia, they say routine is a really big part of managing everything. Routine it really is everything, especially sleep, right? But if there's a way to routinely rewire your brain, along with therapy and along with medication, I think maybe we could see some differences, because if you're rewiring your brain and your neurochemistry, and that's the thing that's causing X, Y, or Z disease for you to have these terrible thoughts or feel a certain way, then maybe there's some, bigger hope out there that we can get past it, where it's like, oh, okay, I don't know, we have diabetes. Okay, well, great. We got insulin for that. It doesn't mean it's not always managed. Again, you have to manage it with mental health or working out, but hopefully there's quicker solutions.
If our present is any indication of that, we have come a long way, which means that we're just going to keep coming a long way. At least I would like to think, and I'd like to believe and hope. I want us to leave on kind of a piece of advice. You could lean into this with the advice for a kid who's maybe experiencing this with a family member. You could lean into this with the direction of somebody who's helping a family member as an adult that went through this. However you want to, but maybe some advice for people that are experiencing similar things that you have gone through throughout the course of your life.
I think my biggest advice is don't give up, but also you have to take care of yourself. And the one thing I always struggle with is taking care of me first and putting my oxygen mask on first. Because you really can't help anybody else if you're not okay. You don't have to be perfect, but you got to be okay.
I think that's really great advice. And you are an incredibly strong, awesome woman who I have loved having as a friend, not only for your amazing heart, but just you as a person. I think empathy and kindness goes such a long way, and you have all of those. So
thank you.
Everything you keep doing, just keep doing it. But please also take care of yourself, because I want you here forever.
I want to be here for a while. I have a lot of stuff to do, okay?
Deal.